You are listening to the North Carolina Food and Beverage Podcast. Thank you for downloading and subscribing. Coming to you virtually live from high atop the historic Raleigh building in beautiful downtown Raleigh. The NCF&B takes the listener behind the scenes to tell the stories of the people that contribute to the creation of the food and beverage community of North Carolina. And now, the misfits in the dish pit, the faces of the front. They are Max Trujillo and Matthew Weiss.
Good. All right. So we're still here in Asheville for the inaugural Chow Festival. I am your co-host, Max Trujillo.
I am your co-host, Matthew Weiss. And listen up, all you ginophiles. We're going to get down and dirty into a bottle of gin or two or three with Durham Distillery's own Melissa Katrinzik.
There it is.
Yeah. And
WWE's own
Bill Goldberg of Oak and Grist.
No, William Goldberg of Oak and Grist. That is the home team. That's what I said. I'm having a home team cocktail here at the Montford rooftop.
And Melissa is giving you really nasty outlooks.
We're ready to try the Durham Distillery side of things. She's got the same cocktail Durham Distillery.
Oh, see, this is how competitive Melissa is. I elected to have an Oak and Grist cocktail, so then she elected to have the same cocktail.
She did it before
with her own booze in it, just to be like, oh, this is the way it should
I
taste.
tried Williams before,
She did.
and I liked it a lot. But when you're in your,
That is tasty.
and it's a Navy cocktail, it's been a long day.
I need to taste both.
Hello.
So we are having delicious cocktails here. It's like part two of being at the Montford. This is how fun these festivals are. You get great makers and business leaders and whatever from all over, but you know, we're in a cool industry, food and beverage, so that two independent gin distillers just walked into a gin joint and are sitting there talking at the bar, and we're laughing. I mean, granted, we kind of fabricated this whole thing. We were like, hey, William, you should join us, and hey, Melissa, you should join us, and they actually did.
That's what we do.
Yeah.
So let's just jump in right there because so these are wildly different. What is the cocktail, first of all? It's like a burnt sugar caramel thing going on.
Well, here, because we have Miranda who made the drink, she's right here. I'm going to ask her 2 seconds. Will you explain what this cocktail is?
So it is, I'm using French Broad cocoa nibs, so they're a local chocolate roasting company, and I'm infusing that in Coqui de Torino vermouth. That also has like a 72-hour infusion. Then we're pulling that, and we're using Will's freaking awesome Oak and Grist, which is technically a Genever, so you have that deep malt profile, which really goes well with the vermouth. And then, I'm a Vieux Carré girl, so a little Benedictine didn't hurt anybody. So that bitter is stirred, and then we do try and, reduce as much waste as possible. So, I do believe in functional garnish, and sometimes you do need a wheel of something, so we dehydrate all those to reduce waste. But
nobody knows what are those.
So traditionally, I believe that wheels should show you what kind of juice is in your cocktail, or have a functional garnish. And here it is functional. You can eat that. It's a bruleed sugar orange, and I think it complements the nose of the cocktail and just the taste of that cocktail as you drink it.
I have to jump in here too because we were talking. Miranda came up with this. She was like, "Hey, can we maybe dehydrate some garnishes because I don't want people ruining the acidity of the cocktail anymore. Everyone's taking their lime garnish or whatever and squeezing it in the cocktail." And I'm like, "Yeah, and we can also reduce our food waste."
Yeah.
So and then I was out of the country this spring, and every bar I went to, every garnish was dehydrated. I'm like, "Yeah, it's $120 for a dehydrator. We're dehydrating all of our citrus for every cocktail."
It really helps save our waste.
Yeah, if you don't realize it, citrus is really expensive. Like limes,
and
lemons.
The life on fresh citrus. Once you juice it, it's hours for grapefruit. Yeah. Hours for orange. So you want to have things that look good and taste good, and you can accomplish that with dehydration. So
Can we just talk about that gin for a second because of how it differentiates the cocktail?
Yeah.
So it's the same cocktail, one with Durham Distillery gin, one with Oak and Grist gin. And so my personal take on it is this is a lighter style of it with the gin profile in it. I get a little bit more of the actual gin, But this is
Conniption
more
Navy.
the Conniption
Yeah,
Navy.
you're pointing at things.
Yeah,
We're on a
sorry.
podcast.
Yeah.
Of
Conniption
Melissa's
Navy.
Durham Distillery, and then the cocktail with the oaken grist is a little bit of a beefier, more muscular profile in the cocktail. Did you experience the same, Max? Or would you-
I didn't. I have a different take. I thought that the Durham Distillery's cocktail was like the botanicals were really up front. Like I got all of the
That's basically what I just said. Yeah.
I think that because Miranda knows flavors so well, she specifically chose the oaken grist for this cocktail. I think the oaken grist works best in this cocktail because of the way it balances. You know, but Melissa Katrinsic's going to put her Navy strength in anything, like a baby bottle, like in the mac and cheese, like in her car, like gasoline. Like she's going to put it wherever she can.
What are those
In a can.
to deserve this?
In a can. I'm kidding. I love Durham Distillery.
He's wearing a Durham Distillery t-shirt as we speak.
I know. I love the brand, and I love giving Melissa shit.
I don't even have for you to back me up here this time.
You don't
going
need-
for the jugular.
You don't need backup.
So is it different grains or bases that are going
Oh,
in?
absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Williams talked it out more than I
Go
can.
ahead, William.
100%. So the approach that we took with our gin is more of a Genever style gin. So it is, and we took that to the maximum. So we are a 100% malted barley based gin. So we bring a lot of whiskey profile in our gin, and then on top of that, we dialed back the juniper flavor profile, as is traditional in Genever style gins. And then built on top of that a really regional botanical flavor profile. So juniper, coriander, lemon verbena, chamomile, sumac, carrot, orris root, and angelica root are the botanicals that flavor that whiskey base to turn it into gin. So it is inherently a deeper, richer, in my opinion, a slightly fuller gin than your typical London dry style gin.
Yeah, and that's actually, it's great that both of you are here together because your gins are wildly different from each other, and that's why they can kind of coexist. They don't really step on each other's toes, so to speak. And so with that, how would you explain? It's been a while since you've been on the show, Melissa, about Conniption.
2 years or 3?
It's about 2 years, almost 3 maybe. We've been doing the podcast for 3 years now, and so you were one of the first. So
12 or 15.
yeah.
I've listened to it a couple times. I still go back to it because I just feel like I'm still.
Oh, so you're the one.
No, shush.
That listens
I've
to
listened to it twice.
Actually, you know what? There is a fun fact about your episode that is wildly different than many other episodes in a stats category. That, of course, when an episode is released in its first few months, that's when it's going to be most listened to. But your episode has in 2017. I should say, I'm sorry. So it was released in 2017.
Yeah.
In 2018, you had more listens than you had in 2017, which is interesting, meaning that more people went back.
We promoted it.
Oh yeah, I know.
I think Max and Melissa might need to have their own podcast to hash out some differences here.
It was just you set it up so
Let's get
well.
on the table. What's
Set
bothering
it
y'all?
up so well. No, but more people.
You didn't let me talk to me like that. I can barely hear what's happening.
No, but it's interesting. So I think it's a product of your product. I think people are really down, and they started listening. They're like, "Damn, I want to learn more about that Durham Distillery."
Yeah.
And they went back and started listening to it. I mean, it's crazy that episode is still one of our most listened to episodes.
Really?
But it picked up a lot of steam later, which is interesting. I mean, we as a podcast got bigger over the years.
Yeah, you sure have.
But that particular episode has kind of helped float it. So we appreciate it too, because obviously people are looking
All right,
for
I'll
good
make sure
content.
to do my due diligence and put it back up there and re-promote it.
So we do have to talk with you, Melissa, about all the crazy things that are going on with Durham Distillery. There's so much happening.
Yeah.
For one, the Senate bill
290.
290, thank you, passed. So that helped out with distillers in a lot of ways. For one, you can now sell as much booze as you want.
Yeah, and I mean the whole distilling community, as William will testify in North Carolina, we're still trying to figure out what it all means. It's a completely different way of looking at your business model.
Yeah.
And so I imagine that there will be some stumbles, but we're all trying to do our best and really take advantage of what we're now able to do.
But Melissa, for you, that's going to be a little bit different on all frames, on all aspects, because you guys are going to be a little bit more in the national spotlight, especially with your association now with Constellation.
We are.
And also, on a very positive note, because your gin has been so well rewarded and awarded on a national level. So what does that mean for your business model going forward?
I think it's a couple things. It's how do we grow smartly? How do we make sure our ethos does not change through the growth? So like first and foremost, when we close the deal, it's about ensuring that the team that has been with us from the get-go is converted into getting the salaries that they should get.
Yeah.
So we're just really proud of the team that we've been building, and we know that they're going to be part of our success model. And and then it's also looking at how do we grow smartly in the metropolitan areas through the southeast region and then up the eastern seaboard, where we really think that the conniption, just the love of gin and the desire to spread the word of mouth about what conniption is has a really strong potential. So for us, it's Atlanta, it's Charleston, it's Nashville, it's definitely DC, and then it's in certain pockets of New York. It's not Manhattan necessarily, and then going up to Boston. And so we don't know what we don't know, and it's pretty intimidating right now, just because it's a whole new ball game. But we feel that with the strategic partner that we've got in Constellation, that we now have a future that we could only have dreamed of 6 months ago.
Nice.
And so we're just really excited.
I mean, going back to your first episode on our show, you and Lee, of course, Lee, your husband, and he is the distiller, if you will.
He's head distiller. Yeah, he's in charge of all production now.
Quick question, does he still have a full-time job?
No, I know. So he's full-time now in the distillery.
He got to quit.
He is, So I don't know if you saw, but I announced that on Father's Day this year, and I'm overjoyed for him.
Yeah. So Lee's been working as a chemist, right?
Chemist.
For many years.
Full-time, yeah.
As making this delicious gin. And, and now he gets to focus on it all around.
All the time.
Now he gets to listen to Adam Carolla 24/7.
Yeah, I know. He still does. So he's canning with the headphones in.
So let's switch gears, because William, maybe people don't know about Oak and Grist, and maybe
not.
And you've been around for how long?
We'll be 3 in January.
Okay, so you're 3 years. I will say though, you have really cool hats, so that's important.
Matt's always trying to look for a free hat. That's why he said that.
There you go.
He already got a free hat earlier today.
Send me one later.
Okay. Yeah, you don't want the one that was on my head. That's not a clean hat.
Yeah, well, where did we first meet? It wasn't at
Whiskey Kitchen.
It was at the Whiskey Kitchen. That's right.
Whiskey Kitchen.
Yeah, Whiskey Kitchen. You were tasting. They always feature a local product, or so it doesn't have to be local, but they always feature a different distiller. And actually, I think I looked at you more as a whiskey maker, because you do make some fantastic whiskey, and you even the one thing that the big takeaway I had was that you bottle in small 375 bottles, and this is like a premium whiskey. So cost-wise, it obviously would be half price of, say, like a high-end whiskey, but proportionate-wise, it's in the same ballpark. But you quickly then kind of told me, you said, well, I mean, look, we're a boutique niche whiskey, so I'm not going to try to kill you by having you buy an $80 bottle. I just ask you for a $40 bottle instead, and it's half. But it's delicious, and it's great, and you're always doing these small batches. Basically, you're always doing a different version of your whiskey. Is that right?
Yeah. So we were founded to craft a regionally inspired single malt whiskey. But our ultimate whiskey is a 10-plus-year-old whiskey. So for us, it's how do we get to that 10-plus-year-old whiskey while still being able to share the whiskey experience with folks as we get there. So the way that we're doing it is we're releasing limited amounts of our whiskey as it ages towards that 10-plus-year-old whiskey in different barrel types, different char levels, different amounts of time, to really showcase how our young grain to glass whiskey is aging in those different barrel treatments, because there's a lot of 60% of whiskey's final flavor comes from the maturation process, and so we are really interested in that exploration. So our Stripling series, which is how we're releasing our whiskeys, is allowing us to do that. We're on our 4th whiskey release. When I left the distillery yesterday, we had 6 bottles of it left. And it was a New American Oak with a light char, 53-gallon New American Oak with a light char for a year, and then finished in an ex-cider barrel. So still a super young whiskey, but we're celebrating that. We love that our young whiskey has so much flavor, and so.
But you're distilling all your own, right? You're not buying whiskeys and finishing them.
We don't buy whiskey. We don't buy gin. We don't buy gin. We don't buy vodka. We are 100% grain to glass from scratch with local malt, and all the time, every day.
In your whiskeys, is corn the major grain, or
100% malted barley?
100% malted barley.
We've distilled a couple limited batches of rye whiskey, so at least 51% rye. But I only have a few barrels of that, so who knows when that will ever see the light of day.
Well, make sure the NCF&B pod sees some of that, because
of course
we love ourselves some rye on the NCF&B.
Yeah, that's the funny part, is that we're talking about this whiskey, and then you just said to me as we first met, I'm trying your whiskeys, and I'm like, yeah, I'm thinking this is a whiskey guy, all right. And he's like, oh, by the way, I also have this gin if you want to try that. And that blew me away. I went, whoa, wait, what is this? And as we all know, I love Conniption. We talk about Conniption all the time. I think it's one of the best gins, not just in North Carolina, but around the world. Shannon Healy said that one time on the show, and he's like, it's not just good for here, it's good. It's one of the best. So, but it also has a flavor profile, and that's what we're saying is that Oak and Grist they can coexist.
William bringing up Genever, or Genevieve, however you want to pronounce it, to North Carolina, I mean, it's a spirit that's almost been lost. And so I give him a lot of credit of really trying to hone in his single malt base with botanicals and showing what it can turn into. I mean, that's when a distiller has fun and really brings something to the table that people don't expect.
And Melissa, wait, just to qualify, so Conniption gin is the grain most in that would be...
We're corn-based.
You're corn-based. Okay.
Yeah, and we are not grain to glass. We've been fully transparent since day one. We never intended to be, but we certainly admire...
Most of the gins on the shelf, even your... I'm pretty sure I just learned not too long ago that Hendrix is GNS as well.
95% of your world's best gins are not grain to glass. It's because we don't have the ability to clean it up as much as we need to clean it up to have that base spirit to be the stage instead of part of the show. And so William has it where it's part of the show. That base complements the botanicals he has chosen.
Yeah, totally. And that's what was so cool about tasting those two cocktails side by side is you completely get the differences. And I mean, Max, actually, you said it better than me, but the botanicals in yours shine, like they stand out.
Yep.
But in yours, William, in Oak and Grist, the cocktail melds a little bit better together because it's that barley that's mixing with those heavier flavors and that burnt sugar, the bruleed fruit.
By the way, I now have a new cocktail that Melissa provided over here because she wasn't going to go down without a fight.
Going down
She's
your
like,
favorite one.
No, let me get a cocktail that was made for my gin, and damn right it is. I assume this is, if not a riff off of, it is a type of Negroni. Is that what I'm drinking?
It is a type of Negroni, yeah. So Miranda, I love the fact that she put together that French broad cocoa nib vermouth. So you have to showcase a Negroni in that. So that's what you have in front of you.
I'm a happy man. I've got a lot of gin in front of me. This podcast is going to go downhill fast.
Seriously. Take it easy, big cat. I have two questions for you, or the same question for both of you guys before we get out of here, but it's kind of my question of the day, but I found it very effective. It's, what are the consumers' main misconceptions about gin that maybe bother you?
Melissa's laughing way too hard on this one. Did you want to go first?
No, I don't want to go first.
I mean, mine sort of revolve around the fact that we make a Genever style gin, and nobody understands. You know, Bowls is pretty much the only Genever style gin that the U.S. sees. I mean, maybe in bigger markets you see some different Genever style gins, but there is no, unlike whiskey, unlike tequila, unlike brandy, there is no base requirement for a gin. So you can make it out of anything that you possibly want to make it out of. The sky is the limit. I looked into making it out of whey, which is the spent product from making cheese.
Yeah.
So that would be my main thing. And then on top of that, you know, yes, gin has to have juniper in it, and it's got to, by definition, be the predominant flavor. But the world is your oyster. I mean, you saw, I was just given a little bit of a class earlier today about how gin transformed throughout the ages. And, you know, we've gone through these periods of different flavor profiles in gin, and I think we're in this really interesting phase right now where gin makers are starting to explore flavors outside of juniper and what can be brought to that. And, you know, I think that's a really big thing. A lot of people go to gin for that gin-specific juniper flavor profile, but you can really infuse a lot more flavor into it than just the juniper. And I think both Durham and Oak and Grist are good examples of that, because we both have an interesting spin on a gin style.
So I have to press you on that for a second, because like the people that I know and people that are not necessarily beverage professionals or in the industry, they often want just a simple gin and tonic, right? They want their botanicals, they want it simple. It's a classic cocktail. It's very simple, but it's delicious. And so if I didn't want that, or if I wanted something that had other flavors or not a juniper forward spirit, why wouldn't I simply just drink whiskey or rum or something different?
Because you're not going to get the added benefit of botanicals in those spirits. You're going to get straight whiskey, you're going to get straight rum, whereas with gin, as long as you're using juniper, you can add anything that you want to it. I mean, you can essentially make a liqueur, and the sky's the limit in terms of flavor, but keep it with juniper, and it's a gin.
Right.
So, Matt, are you asking why do people drink gin?
No. I'm saying in this new age of making gin, like you were talking about,
a little bit different,
and pulling back on the juniper and introducing other flavors.
Right. But you're saying, like,
why would I drink gin?
That's why I should be drinking gin, is because it tastes like gin.
Yes.
So try not to not make it taste like gin.
Yes.
Because then you're not.
Then you're making a flavored vodka.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
But that is the old adage that gin is the world's original flavored vodka.
Yeah, and I think, and to answer the original question of where is it that we find points of differentiation learning into the gin category, it all comes down to there's just so much that seems to be misunderstood about gin. It doesn't need to all be a London Dry. It doesn't need to be all like licking a pine tree and juniper forward. You can have a lot of that variety of flavor, a lot of different complexities that people do not understand that can exist in the gin category. So for me, where I geek out on gin is that, you know, there are so many women that come into this distillery and they take a tour and they come off to the side after a tour and they say to me, and they whisper it, they're like, I love gin.
Why do they
Like too much.
They do. And it's like, I'm like, I know.
So do I.
I know.
Yeah.
And it's like, and it's, we are giving them the okay to say it out loud,
right,
to embrace it. You know, I admire the craft story of Tito's and how it has taken over, but you don't need to make the call of Tito's and soda when you go to a bar.
Well, but if you're wearing Oakleys, then you have to.
Hey,
Fair enough.
Oh, are you wearing
Oh,
Oakleys?
man.
They're prescription Oakleys.
All right.
The Tito's and soda.
If you have Croakies on your Oakleys,
Okay, yeah.
then you're drinking tea.
But I mean, it really comes down to there seems to be two big hurdles to embracing gin. The first one is if they've had a bad gin experience. And we ask that first and foremost on our tour. Have you had one? And I will tell you, at least 50% of the time, they raise their hands.
I have had a bad
I
gin
know.
experience.
And it's off of stuff that you shouldn't have been drinking.
Yeah.
Not high quality gin.
Like, hasn't everybody had a bad experience with whiskey, with beer, with wine?
Like everybody has a tequila bad experience.
Gin seems to stand out more.
Hurdle.
Well, they say that. Like, I remember going back and like learning from bartenders, and they'd be like, "Oh, gin drunks are the worst because they're the most smelling of liquor."
Well, and then there's so many people also that tell me that gin makes them crazy, and I'm like, no, it doesn't. No, it does not.
Yeah, you're just a crazy
There's
person.
nothing in the gin botanical mix that would make you go off the rails. There's no absinthe in there. There's no. There's not.
But back to the thing, like I mean about the misconceptions of gin and the hard part of defining it is somebody was telling me recently. I was visiting a distillery, and I think the TTB has no jurisdiction or description of barrel aged gin.
Oh no. Yeah, they do not.
The term age.
You can't use aged.
It's rusted. We like
Yeah.
to say it's going to take a nap. Yeah. So Lee is working on his series, his barrel series, and he's going to release 2 to 3 a year. And they're going to be very special releases based on botanical blends, how long it's in the barrel, and what type of barrel it is, as well as what type of base it is. But those are the things where gin distillers play. That gives us the ability to play in much the same way that a whiskey or a bourbon distiller would play.
Okay.
But going back to the original redistilled gin, the other hurdle is just it's the fact that there's a misunderstanding that gin is flavored vodka.
Right. You mean that's a misunderstanding?
They don't know it. They don't know it. So many consumers have really no understanding of gin and vodka being cousins.
Right.
And so I feel like as a gin distiller now who's trying to really make the gin renaissance come into the United States, if I can get people to understand that gin is vodka with flavor, I have won.
Yeah.
Yeah, because everyone's just drinking vodka blindly. It's like,
It's just a call.
Well,
It's just an easy call.
vodka's like the Pinot Grigio of the spirit. That's okay. I mean, okay. So I have one last question. So I'm totally, my mind is escaping me about Old Tom gin because we do have an established category for
Sweetened
Old Tom
gin.
gin.
Yeah.
So what exactly does that mean?
So it means that originally, during the gin craze of the 17th century rather, of the United Kingdom, when they had brought over from the Netherlands the Genever style gin, everybody went crazy for it, but they didn't have a lot of distilleries. So what they ended up doing was getting acetone, methanol, so turpentine, and they had to flavor it. So they flavored it with your botanicals, but they also, in order to make sure that our palates and our body could not understand that it was poisonous, you added sugar. So that's why a lot of people also really had things that were going to be in dangerous situation for their health.
Okay.
You added sugar. So it could be licorice, it could be the grain, or sort of cane sugar, whatever they could get their hands on. That's where Old Tom came from.
And so
it was the quality of the alcohol.
So that it still exists today, though, with an Old Tom gin is basically.
But with really good alcohol.
Right.
Yeah.
But the profile is sweeter. It would be
It's a sweetened gin, yeah, but it's not a liqueur. I think that's where people kind of think it's not a cordial style. It really means that it's a slightly sweetened version. So, like, if you look at Hayman's Old Tom is the only Old Tom that's actually with disgranulated sugar. If you look at Jensen's Old Tom out of London, they're actually sweetened with licorice root. Right? So you could go the natural route. There's not a lot of Old Toms in the United States yet. We're seriously considering.
Yeah, Ransom.
Ransom actually then barrel ages it in Pinot Noir bottle or casks. So they do a dual process on theirs. But
By the way, they make some killer vermouth. So I'm just gonna
don't
say.
they know?
Yeah.
it is evident Melissa has done her homework.
Yeah, she has.
Sorry.
God damn, you go.
Love it.
Before we get out of here, I just want to advertise, because it's really cool, that obviously you now have your Durham Distillery cans. You have
canned cocktails.
the canned cocktails. It's a gin and tonic, and it's a vodka soda, and now a rosé spritz. She's not paying me to say any of this at all. But it's cool, and these are like canned cocktails you can get everywhere now, ABC stores and all, and you can get it at
Yeah,
restaurants too.
ABC stores, but not grocery.
Yeah. Well, 'cause, come on, baby steps.
I know.
We're getting there.
ABV, right?
Yeah, I mean, if I want to put that malt beverage in, I can go into grocery.
Yeah, but so you're actually, but this is actual gin that is in the can.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, because I know a lot of
shortcuts.
Yeah, people were like, oh, it was just gonna be like a malt liquor, but what? No.
And
This
like
is
that
real
tonic
gin.
syrup, I make it by hand in our batch kitchen.
I do like that it says 2 servings per can, quote unquote. I mean, it is technically, but if you put yourself alone in a room with 1 can, you're gonna come out a little funny.
I don't have to be alone.
Well, I'm just saying you're not sharing it with anyone. That's all I mean. If you drink the entire can
They're
or
not
whatever.
that high. They're 8% or 11. The rosé is the 11%. So.
Yeah. Well, I think if you have an 11% beer,
it's got rosé
you're
and
gonna get pretty
Batista
fucked
raw
up,
wine in
so.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, of course, and it's not going to be open anytime soon, but
Corpse Survivor.
Corpse Survivor
is
Bar
yep.
will be a subterranean bar at the distillery.
Yeah, so well, actually, we thought it was an urban legend, but our landlord has found different documentation that it used to be where they manufactured pine coffins.
Oh, so that's not just a clever name.
No, so that's why the logo has the cocktail shaker with the coffin in the middle.
That's pretty awesome. And, of
Yeah.
course, it's a delicious gin.
And it's going to be the signature cocktail, of course. The absinthe rinse with the...
And we have no open date for that. That's like...
We are targeting early 2020.
Okay, all right.
I mean, that,
can be
but
patient.
it's going to be a really great experience. It's not just a bar. So there's going to be just a lounge feel to it where you can go in as you are and enjoy a cocktail with friends, but we want to actually bring the service to you. So we're going to have trolley side service. So there's going to be a martini trolley with frozen conniption bottles pouring into a martini glass in front of you.
Well, it's like dim sum for cocktails.
It's going to be great.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
I love it. Well,
really people to enjoy themselves and just see what we can do.
So that's in downtown Durham. You can visit the distillery. You can go to Corpse Survivor in early 2020.
Yeah, we've got all the handles
Cool.
too, of course.
William, what about if people want to experience Oak and Grist? Where do they go? What do they do?
So we have a tasting room in Black Mountain, North Carolina, about 15 miles east of Asheville, and we will also be opening a bar in early 2020. But the tricky thing with the way North Carolina set things up is for the longest time, distilleries haven't been able to make cocktails, so now all of a sudden everybody's scrambling to figure out how to make cocktails in the space that they have. So yeah, we're in the same boat. We're into the process of opening a bar, but it'll be a little while.
that's cool. It's very exciting. Well, thank you both for coming in here. This has turned into being quite a fun little afternoon. So, Matt, you got anything else?
Well, when you're in Durham, obviously go to Durham Distillery, and when you are in Asheville, go to Oak and Grist, and you will drink extremely merrily.
Thanks for listening to the NC F&B podcast. And if you've stuck with us this long, review us on iTunes, and remember, 5 stars are encouraged.